It was one of those slow-moving, quietly warm Saturdays where time seemed to melt a little between the hours. I was sprawled across my couch, half scrolling through my phone, half watching the ceiling fan spin above me, when I noticed a missed call from Liam, my best friend since high school, the guy who'd known me longer than anyone outside my own family. His message was simple. He'd left his gym shoes in my trunk after yesterday's pickup basketball game and asked if I could swing by and drop them off. It didn't feel like a big deal. I tossed on a hoodie, grabbed the sneakers from the back of my car, and texted him that I was on my way. His house wasn't far, 10, maybe 15 minutes across town. I'd been over 100 times enough that I didn't even need GPS to guide me anymore. I knew his mom, Charlotte, though not well. We'd exchanged the usual polite small talk whenever I was over, but she mostly kept to herself. She struck me as the quiet type kind, a little reserved, always with a soft voice and a tired smile. She worked long hours at the hospital. I remembered that. I also remembered, against my better judgment, that she was beautiful in a quiet, low-key kind of way, but she was Liam's mom, and that was the end of it. When I pulled up to the house and stepped onto the porch, I assumed Liam would be the one to answer the door. I was wrong. The door swung open, and there she was, Charlotte, but not like I'd seen her before. She was wearing a fitted gray workout tank and black leggings, her hair damp and clinging lightly to her forehead. Her skin glistened faintly with sweat, and a wireless earbud dangled from one ear. She had clearly just finished a workout, still breathing a little heavier than normal, still flushed with heat. Her eyes widened just slightly in surprise, but she recovered with a calm, effortless smile. "Russell," she said, her voice warm, not at all embarrassed. "Hi." "Liam just ran to the store." "Oh," I said awkwardly, holding up the sneakers like a peace offering. "I was just dropping these off. He said he left them in my car." She nodded, one hand resting lightly on the doorframe. "That was nice of you. I just finished up my run. Come in if you want. It's cooler inside." I hesitated, but only for a second. She wasn't a stranger after all. I'd been in this house more times than I could count, but something about her today felt different. "Sure," I said. She stepped back to let me in, and I followed, suddenly all too aware of the soft scent trailing behind her, something clean and citrusy like soap and sweat and something else. I sat on the edge of the couch while she walked toward the kitchen. "Want some water?" she asked, opening the fridge. "Yeah, thanks." She poured 2 glasses and returned, sitting across from me in the armchair. I tried not to stare, tried to keep my eyes above the neckline of her tank. But it wasn't just how she looked. It was the energy, like I'd walked into a room that felt familiar, but now held something strange beneath the surface. We chatted casually at first about Liam's school, how she'd picked up running during the pandemic, and it stuck. But the longer we talked, the more open she became, not in a dramatic way, just real. "I don't know," she said after a pause. "Sometimes it feels like everything moves forward and I'm standing still. Liam's grown up so fast. It's like I blinked and he stopped needing me." Her tone wasn't sad exactly. It was reflective, a quiet confession. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. "Do you ever feel like that?" she asked suddenly, her eyes meeting mine, like you're watching your own life from the outside. I was taken aback, not by the question, but by how much I actually understood it. "Yeah," I said. "Sometimes I feel like I'm going through the motions, school, work, friends, but it's like I'm not fully there." She smiled, but there was a distant look in her eyes. "It's strange, isn't it? You get so good at being fine that you forget how to say you're not." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment I saw her not as Liam's mom, not as some adult authority figure, but as a woman, someone with thoughts and doubts, and a kind of quiet vulnerability that pulled at something deep in my chest. "You've grown up a lot, Russell," she said softly. "When did that happen?" I gave a small laugh, mostly to break the tension creeping into the space between us. "Guess it just snuck up on both of us." She stood, brushing her hands on her leggings. "I should probably shower," she said with a half smile. "But thanks for staying a bit. I didn't realize I needed to talk until I started." I got up, nodding slowly. "Any time," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't even sure if I was still there for the shoes anymore. She walked me to the door. As she opened it, the warm afternoon light spilled across her living room floor. I stepped out, sneakers forgotten for a moment in my hand, and she leaned against the doorframe. I hope you know, she said quietly. You're always welcome here, even when Liam isn't. My mouth went dry. I nodded, swallowing hard. Thanks, Charlotte. And just like that, the door closed gently behind me. I walked back to my apartment, not entirely sure what had just happened, but one thing was clear: I wasn't seeing Charlotte the same way anymore. It had only been a few days since that quiet Saturday, but the memory of it clung to me like morning fog, soft, persistent, impossible to shake. I kept running it back in my head, the way Charlotte's tank clung to her after her run, the gentle flush on her cheeks, her voice calm, though honest, that sentence. You're always welcome here, even when Liam isn't. That wasn't something you said to your son's friend unless it meant something else. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe she was just being polite, but the more I tried to convince myself, the more that afternoon kept replaying itself with new weight. I didn't tell Liam, of course. There was nothing to tell, not yet, but I felt weird around him, like I was carrying a secret I didn't ask for. We were at his place again the following Thursday, just hanging out, gaming in the basement, like we always did when school got too real and life got too heavy. Charlotte wasn't around. She was working a late shift or so, I thought. I was upstairs grabbing a soda from the fridge when I heard the front door open behind me. I turned, and there she was this time, in scrubs, navy blue, a stethoscope still draped around her neck. Her hair was pulled back into a low, messy bun, her expression somewhere between exhausted and peaceful. Hey, she said, a little surprised to see me. Didn't know you were over. Hey, I echoed. Yeah, Liam said I could swing by. We're just downstairs. She smiled, setting her purse down by the kitchen counter. Good. He needs to get out of his own head sometimes. He's been overthinking everything lately. College stuff, future, purpose, life, she said, waving a hand with a tired laugh. You name it. We stood there in silence for a moment, her leaning against the counter, me holding a can of soda I'd forgotten to open. The fridge hummed between us. You look tired, I said before I could stop myself. She looked at me with a soft kind of curiosity. That obvious, kinda, I said, trying to keep it light. Long day. She nodded. Hours on my feet, most of it spent trying to reassure people that their worst fears weren't coming true. Some days it feels like I'm holding everyone's world together with tape. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't have to. She reached into a cabinet, pulled out a glass, and poured herself some water. When she turned around, her eyes lingered on me just a second longer than necessary. It was subtle, but it was there. I'm going to shower, she said, setting the glass down. Tell Liam I said hi. I nodded, and just like that, she disappeared down the hall, but the air she left behind was heavier somehow, thicker charged. That night after I got home, I found myself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking not about the game Liam and I had played, but about her, about Charlotte, and not just how she looked. It was the way she talked, the way she made space for silence, without rushing to fill it, the way she looked at me, like I was more than just another teenage boy cluttering her living room. Something had changed, and I couldn't tell if it was in her or in me. 2 days later, I ran into her again, total accident. I was at the local grocery store pushing a cart with frozen pizza and shampoo when I turned the corner and nearly collided with her. She was in leggings again, and a hoodie this time, her hair down loose and slightly messy in the way that didn't look like she'd tried to style it, but still worked. Oh, sorry, she said, startled, then smiled when she realized it was me, Russell. Hi. Hey, I said, trying not to sound as flustered as I felt. Didn't expect to see you here. Same, she said. I usually come early in the morning. Less people. We stood there, two half-full carts between us. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then she motioned to my cart. Big night in. I looked down at the sad selection, frozen dinner snacks, a bottle of iced tea, and gave a half shrug. Wild Friday, as you can see. She laughed. God, that laugh. It wasn't loud. It was light, breathy, unforced, the kind of laugh that pulled you in without asking for attention. You doing anything tonight? She asked suddenly, casually, like it was the most normal question in the world. I blinked. No, not really. Liam's out with his friends. I was going to make dinner and maybe watch something. You're welcome to join if you want. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because of everything that might come with saying yes. I don't want to intrude. You're not, she said gently, cutting me off. I'd actually like the company. I nodded. Okay, yeah, sure. She smiled, and just like that, we were both standing in line with our groceries like nothing was unusual at all. Later that evening, I found myself standing at her front doors again, heart thumping louder than I'd like to admit. She opened it in jeans and a t-shirt, this time no makeup, hair up, and yet somehow she looked even more stunning than she had the last time. Come in, she said, stepping aside. I made enough pasta to feed an army. I followed her in, and the smell of garlic and herbs wrapped around me like a blanket. The kitchen light was warm. Soft jazz played low from a speaker somewhere out of sight. I helped set the table while she finished cooking. We ate without pretense, no fancy setup, no weird tension, just two people sharing a meal and talking about things that didn't demand answers, movies, music, the way certain smells remind you of childhood without warning. At one point, she looked up at me from across the table, fork in hand, and said, I like having you here. There was nothing romantic in her tone, nothing flirtatious, but somehow it still made the hairs on my arms rise. I like being here, I said quietly, and I meant it. I didn't sleep much that night, not because anything dramatic happened. There was no kiss, no sudden confession, no movie-style moment where everything shifted in an instant, but still something had changed, something I could feel humming under my skin. Charlotte and I had spent hours at that dinner table long after we'd finished eating. We just kept talking. At some point, she brought out a bottle of red wine, said she usually had a glass on Fridays. She offered me some half joking, and I said yes. One glass turned into two, not enough to be drunk, just enough to loosen the weight of the week enough to make the silences between us feel softer, more deliberate. When I finally stood up to leave, it was late, the kind of late that makes everything feel quiet and closer than it should be. Thanks for dinner, I said, my voice lower than usual. She was standing by the sink, rinsing the glasses. She looked up, and there was something unreadable in her expression. Not hesitation, not regret, just something. I liked having you here, she said again. I wasn't sure if it would feel weird, but it didn't. You made it feel normal. I'm glad, I said. I wasn't sure if I should have said yes, to be honest. Charlotte dried her hands, then leaned back against the counter, her arms crossed loosely in front of her. Why? I shrugged. I don't know, because I'm Liam's friend, because I didn't want to misread the invitation. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. It's okay to accept kindness, Russell, even when it surprises you. We stood there in silence. The light above the stove buzzed softly. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Then she said it so quietly I almost missed it. Sometimes I forget what it feels like to be seen. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see her through the lens of my best friend's mom. I didn't see the woman who used to drive us to school or who left snacks out during movie nights. I just saw her Charlotte alone, strong, tired, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with how she looked and everything to do with how she stood there, unguarded. You are, I said, seen. Her eyes held mine for a beat too long, and then she nodded almost to herself. Good night, Russell. I left, but I didn't really leave, not in my head. I replayed the night again and again like a song stuck on loop, slow and haunting. The next morning, Liam texted me asking if I wanted to shoot hoops. I said yes, mostly out of guilt. We met at the park and fell into our usual rhythm, trash talk, lazy layups, half serious one-on-one, but my heart wasn't in it. Dude, Liam said between breaths, catching the rebound. You're off today. Everything okay? Yeah, I lied. Just didn't sleep well. He nodded, not pushing it, but I could feel the question hanging in the air. After the game, we sat on the curb, sipping sports drinks and watching kids play on the jungle gym nearby. The sun was high, but the breeze kept it bearable. You ever feel like people change when you're not looking? Liam asked suddenly. I glanced at him. What do you mean? Like, I don't know my mom. She's been different lately, not in a bad way, just different. I think she's lonely. The word hit harder than I expected. I didn't answer right away. She's always been there, he continued, always solid, but now sometimes she just zones out during dinner like she's not really with me. I tried to keep my voice steady. Have you talked to her about it? Kinda. She brushes it off, says she's fine, says works just a lot. He sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know. It sucks not knowing how to help someone who's helped you your whole life. That stayed with me long after we said goodbye. A week passed. We didn't see each other, not me and Charlotte, not even me and Liam. School was hectic, assignments piling up, and I tried so hard to just focus on what was in front of me, but her voice kept coming back, that soft admission. Sometimes I forget what it feels like to be seen. I didn't mean to go by her place again. It just happened. I was driving home from campus, and the sky had turned that smoky lavender it does right before sunset. I wasn't thinking clearly. My car just turned onto their street on its own. Her car was in the driveway. I parked across the street and sat there for a full minute debating with myself. Then I got out. When she answered the door, she looked surprised but not upset. "Russell, hi." A pause, then, "Do you want to come in?" I nodded. Inside, the house was quiet, no music, no TV, just the soft tick of the wall clock and the hum of the air conditioning. She was barefoot in a soft, loose sweater and jeans, no makeup, just Charlotte. "I was just cleaning up," she said, motioning toward a pile of folded laundry on the couch. "Didn't expect company." "I didn't plan to come by," I admitted. Her gaze held mine. "You just needed to." I nodded. She smiled gently. "Me too." We didn't talk much that night, not the way we had before. Instead, we just sat, me on one end of the couch, her on the other. A movie played on the TV, but neither of us was really watching. At some point, she shifted to sit closer, not touching, just nearer. And then, during a particularly quiet moment in the film, she turned her head and looked at me, not with nostalgia or politeness or curiosity, but with recognition, like I wasn't a kid anymore, like I was something else. The next few days were a blur of ordinary moments. Classwork, coffee runs, emails, traffic. But nothing felt normal because every quiet second, I had every space between responsibilities. My thoughts drifted back to that night on Charlotte's couch, the way she looked at me, not with caution, but with something deeper, like she was finally allowing herself to really see me. And I couldn't deny it anymore. Something between us had shifted. She hadn't said a word, neither had I, but we both felt it, like the moment before a summer storm, thick, expectant still. It wasn't lust, not exactly. It wasn't a fantasy or a secret craving. It was recognition of what I wasn't sure, but it scared me more than I wanted to admit. That Friday, Liam texted asking if I wanted to grab a drink. There was a sports bar not far from campus where we usually caught up, talked trash about fantasy football, and pretended everything in life could be measured in stats. I said yes, mostly because I didn't want him to notice I'd been distant. We got there early and found a table near the back. The place was already buzzing with noise TVs, blaring laughter from groups of friends, the clink of glasses. I tried to lose myself in the noise, I really did, but 20 minutes in, I saw her, Charlotte. She was at the bar with two women I didn't recognize, friends, maybe coworkers. She was wearing a dark green blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her face was lit up in conversation, but her posture held that same quiet restraint I'd always noticed about her. She didn't see me at first. Then she turned, our eyes met, and she smiled. It was subtle, warm, but unmistakable. My pulse kicked up. I nodded politely, tried to look back at Liam, who was in the middle of a story about someone from his biology lab. But I wasn't listening because when I looked up again, Charlotte was still watching me, only for a second, but long enough. She passed by our table on the way to the restroom, pausing just briefly. "Hey, Russell," she said casually enough. "Didn't expect to see you here." Liam looked up. "Hey, Mom." Charlotte smiled at him, then back at me. "You boys behaving," I chuckled. "Trying to." "Good," she said softly. Then her hand touched my shoulder, just for a moment, barely there but real. Then she was gone. Liam didn't say anything, but I could feel him looking at me. "She seems different tonight," he said. "Yeah," I asked, trying to sound neutral. He shrugged. "I don't know, happier, maybe, or lighter." I didn't respond because I wasn't sure I could without revealing too much. When Liam left for the restroom, Charlotte returned to the bar, and I found myself walking over to her without thinking it through. "Hey," I said, leaning slightly on the edge of the counter. "Hey," she replied, not surprised. Her friends were deep in a conversation and didn't seem to notice me. She shifted her body slightly toward mine. "I didn't expect you to come over," she said, voice low beneath the noise. "I didn't expect to see you here," I said. She gave a soft laugh. "I needed a night out, been feeling stuck lately." "You don't look stuck." I fake it well, she murmured. We stood there like that for a beat, close but not too close, talking, but saying more with our eyes than our mouths. You look good, I said before I could stop myself. Something flickered in her gaze, not surprise, just acknowledgement. So do you, she said. Then Liam came back and we both straightened like nothing had happened, but something had. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about that moment at the bar, the way she looked at me, the way my body reacted to that look, the way I didn't feel like a kid anymore, not around her and not around myself either. Saturday evening, Liam had plans. He texted saying he was heading to a friend's birthday and wouldn't be home till late. I didn't plan to go over, but around 7:30, my phone buzzed. Charlotte, if you're not busy, I made too much food again. Just like that simple light with nothing written between the lines but everything implied. I stared at the screen for a minute, then replied, be there in 20. Her house was lit warmly when I arrived. The sun was just setting, washing the neighborhood in that soft orange hue that made everything feel softer. She opened the door in a long casual cardigan over a tank top, barefoot with a glass of wine already in her hand. Hi, she said. Hey. We stood there for a second, that quiet space between us, as familiar now as the hallway itself. I hope you're hungry, she said, stepping back to let me in. The kitchen smelled like garlic and tomatoes and something roasted. Music played low again this time, something older, maybe Nora Jones. We ate together, talked about small things, the kind of conversation that fills space without pretending to be important, but every so often our hands would brush when we reached for something. Every so often our eyes would meet and hold for just a second too long. After dinner, we moved to the living room. She curled up on the far side of the couch, her legs tucked beneath her wine glass in hand. You always sit over there, she said, half smiling. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. You don't? She said simply. That was it, so I moved closer, not close enough to touch, but closer. The movie played, we didn't talk, and at some point somewhere between the middle of the film and the soft swell of music behind a romantic scene, she turned her head and looked at me, really looked at me, and in that moment I felt like everything I'd been trying to hold back finally caught up. I didn't reach for her, she didn't lean in, we just looked, and that look said more than anything else ever could. I saw her breath catch, just barely, and mine did too, but we didn't move, not yet, because some things are too big for one night. The next morning I woke up feeling like something inside me had been pulled loose and left floating. There had been no kiss, no grand gesture, no confessions, just that look, that impossibly long, impossibly quiet look across the couch that lasted maybe 3 seconds, but felt like a door being unlocked slowly, deliberately. And once it was open, it couldn't be shut again. I tried to go about my weekend, like usual, tried to reset my mind with errands and playlists and texts I didn't really feel like replying to. I met up with some friends from school. Sunday afternoon, sat at the patio of a coffee shop, pretending to laugh at things that didn't really land. But in the back of my head, I kept replaying the way Charlotte's eyes had held mine. Not tentative, not afraid, just real, like two people had finally stopped walking in circles around something they both knew was there. Monday came. Liam texted asking if I wanted to come over and chill after class. My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen him since before the weekend, didn't know what I'd say, didn't know what my face might betray, but I couldn't avoid him forever. That afternoon, I stood in front of their house again, same driveway, same porch, but everything felt heavier now. Liam opened the door with a grin. Dude, you good? Yeah, I said, voice slightly off, just tired. He didn't press it. We hung out in the basement, played some old 2K on his dusty Xbox. It felt like we were kids again for maybe 20 minutes. Then I heard her voice upstairs, not calling out, not saying my name, just existing, and everything in me tensed. Eventually, I excused myself to grab a drink. My legs felt heavier than usual as I climbed the stairs, like I was walking towards something I couldn't define. Charlotte was in the kitchen, hair damp, dressed in a navy sweater and jeans, barefoot again. She looked up the moment I stepped in, but she didn't smile. Her expression was calm, measured, but not cold, just aware. Hi, she said, like it was a test of the air between us. Hey, I replied, reaching for the fridge. There was a beat of silence, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. Then she turned away, rinsing something in the sink, and just like that, the moment passed like we'd made some unspoken agreement without a single word. Later, as I was leaving, Liam walked me to the door. "You've been quiet today," he said. "Yeah, sorry, lot on my mind." He nodded. "I get that." We stood on the porch a second longer, then he added, "My mom likes when you come around, by the way." I looked at him, trying not to flinch. "She says you're easy to talk to." I nodded, swallowing hard. "She's easy to talk to, too." And that was it. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove off with the kind of ache that only comes from wanting two opposite things at the same time. The weeks that followed settled into something quiet. Charlotte and I didn't text, we didn't make plans, we didn't cross lines, but sometimes I'd catch her glance from across the room or hear her laugh echo down the hallway, and I'd feel that thread still connecting us, thin, silent, and taut. We had crossed a line in silence, and now we were carefully walking around it. One evening in late fall, I dropped by to return something Liam had left in my car. It was a simple errand, a nothing moment, but she answered the door, not Liam, Charlotte. And there was something about the look on her face, tired, soft, maybe even a little sad, that hit me harder than I expected. We stood there for a few seconds, neither of us saying anything. Then she said, "You've been well." "I think so," I said, half smiling. She stepped back to let me in, but I shook my head. "Can't stay long." She nodded, another pause, then quietly, "I think about that night sometimes." My heart skipped. I didn't ask which night because I already knew. I looked at her, trying to steady myself. "I do too." Her eyes softened. She didn't move closer, didn't reach out, but she didn't need to. We were already standing in that space again, the one only we knew existed. Finally, she said, "Some things are better left in quiet." I nodded. "Doesn't mean they weren't real." She smiled, then small, sad, and kind. "Exactly." I left after that. No hug, no promises, just that shared understanding between us. Something happened, something neither of us could explain or escape or fully act on, but it was ours, and sometimes that had to be enough. Weeks passed, then months. We still saw each other in passing in crowded rooms, sometimes even at family gatherings when Liam invited me for the holidays, and every time our eyes would meet just for a moment longer than necessary. No one else noticed, but we did. We never touched again, never spoke of it, but the story we didn't tell lived quietly between us. Now, almost a year later, I sometimes drive past that house on the corner of the quiet neighborhood and think about all the things we never said. Not with regret, but with strange kind of peace, because not everything is meant to last forever. Some things are meant to arrive, stir the air, open your eyes, and quietly leave you changed. Charlotte was never just Liam's mom after that. She was the woman who showed me how complex a glance could be, how loud a silence could feel, and how sometimes the most powerful stories live in the spaces we never speak. The story of Russell and Charlotte teaches us a poignant life lesson. Sometimes the most profound connections are unspoken, living in the quiet spaces between words and glances. Their bond, sparked by a simple errand, reveals how empathy and presence can uncover hidden depths in others and in ourselves. Charlotte's vulnerability, her quiet confessions of feeling unseen, reminds us that everyone, no matter their role, carries unspoken struggles. Russell's choice to stay to listen and to see her as more than just a friend's mom shows the power of recognizing someone's humanity. Yet their story also carries a bittersweet truth. Not all connections are meant to be fully realized. The silent electric moments they shared, never crossing into something more, teach us that some feelings are too complex to act upon, yet still leave us changed. This resonates deeply. Life often places us at crossroads where we must balance desire with restraint, connection with responsibility. For anyone who's felt the pull of an unspoken bond, this story is a reminder to cherish those fleeting moments while respecting their boundaries. It urges us to be present, to listen, and to honor the quiet stories that shape us. Have you ever felt a connection that lived in silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. If this moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join our community. Let's keep exploring the beauty and complexity of human connections together.